Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Why did Houston Zoo go to the audience? Like, how did that happen?
So I spent 10 years here, and actually I started the company right before I moved. And for about 4 months before I moved, I was doing work with Aptitude, as Aptitude, here in Houston. Houston Zoo is one of my first clients. So when this project came up, they thought, mobile app, mobile developer, we want to talk to Chris. And I really loved the idea and I loved the project, so I was, I bid very aggressively for the project. So the cool thing about jQuery is, has anybody ever used WordPress before? So with WordPress, you have these things called plugins. And plugins, basically, if you want to have your WordPress blog be more SEO friendly, more Google friendly, you can drop a plugin in and it suddenly has more functionality than it did by the default kind of stock installation of WordPress. jQuery is very similar in that it kind of has all these kind of default things, really cool things that you can do with jQuery, but people can make plugins that you can drop into jQuery and you get all sorts of cool effects and functionality and features that you wouldn't have had normally. So 3 of the plugins that we use to make Houston Zoo Kids are 3 that I'm going to talk about right now. The first one's Stellar, and the next one's JPlayer, the next one's Sprightly. Stellar handles parallaxing. Is anybody familiar with what parallaxing is? I didn't make this up. I can't remember where I heard it, but since I can't remember where I heard it, you can just attribute it to me. But parallaxing is basically if you're on a train and you're staring out the window and you're looking out the window and the things that are going by really, really close to you, like the fence posts, that's one layer, and they're going by really, really fast. And then in the middle ground, if you're looking at like the grass and the bushes that are close to the train tracks but a little bit further back, that would be like moving at kind of a medium speed. And those are the middle ground layer. And then if you look in the back, if you look at the sky and the clouds in the sky, mountains, or whatever's in the far, far background, that would be the furthest layer. It would be moving really slowly. That effect, when you do that on a web page, is called parallaxing. Stellar is something that makes it really easy to do a parallax kind of effect. So in the Houston Zoo Kids world, we wanted to do some parallaxing to give it kind of this lifelike feel. So I'll give you kind of an example of that. This is the Savannah environment in the Houston Zoo Kids game. And I just can't hear the music. But basically, as I scroll, if you look at the foreground here, with the grass at the bottom, it's moving at one speed. And then if you look at the trees in the middle, they're moving at another speed. And the clouds in the background are moving at a slower speed there. That's all achieved using this plugin called Stellar.js. And really, it made it really, really easy. So this is just basically one layer, and you give it one kind of speed. This is another layer, and you give it another speed. And the sky is another layer, and you give it another speed. And you can adjust those speeds really easily. So it puts it all together and makes the world kind of feel really immersive.
So what do you call like that art style? Like, do you guys draw up all that, or I
So
just
that
feel
was-
like I've seen that as very common.
It's Tad Carpenter. He's the illustrator. And he's very popular, so it's probably possible that you've seen his work, like I said. Yeah, really cool guy. Let's see.
So you would outsource them for the artwork and then you plug, I guess, put it into the program?
Yep. He did all sorts of illustrations. We all had this huge meeting back in November, and they brought everybody on the team down to Houston, and we kind of played with the animals, and we met the rhinos and sea lions and stuff like that. And he would do sketches, and he just kind of sketched out all these animals, and then kind of digitized and actually sketched them out digitally, and then he sent over each of these individual animals as just a single frame. And then I'll get into how we animated them in a little bit, but basically, yeah, it's all Tad Carpenter's style. You can see kind of this paper effect back here. That's another kind of trademark Tad Carpenter thing. He uses kind of a Paper Mario kind of style where it's more 2D, but it's really cool. What do you guys think? Do you like it? Like,
Yeah, it looks fun.
yeah. So there's a lot of interesting things going on here, but Stellar is basically the sole thing that you just kind of drop in, and you have all these layers moving with very little JavaScript and coding involved. So it's very nice. And then JPlayer, which is my favorite jQuery plugin. If you've ever had to deal with audio on the web and playing audio or loading up an audio file, it's always been a gigantic pain. Even going back to like when I was a kid and I first got involved in web development, you had to use Flash to load up an MP3, and it was always just kind of a mess. And then recently HTML5 came out, and HTML5 makes audio, including an audio file in a website, very easy. But programming that HTML audio isn't exactly very straightforward and not very easy. JPlayer makes programming for audio really, really easy. So if I say, when this MP3 ends, I want you to play this other MP3. Or when this MP3 ends, I want you to display a dialog box and say game over and replay the game. JPlayer makes all that very possible. You can even do things like when this MP3 gets to the 50% mark, do something new or throw something else up. The most important part for the game is that we had 4 audio tracks. So like there's a track for background music, there's a track for narration, and then there's 2 tracks for sound effects. When you click on something, it makes a little effect, but the music continues, and it's all just kind of layered on top of each other, just like that parallax effect, but with audio. Another very nice thing is that JPlayer plays really well with Safari, Chrome, and Firefox. It doesn't play very well with Internet Explorer, but nothing plays well with Internet Explorer. So, that's actually what I'm working on for the next week, is getting everything to play well in Internet Explorer. Not fun. Let me give you a demo just to kind of give you an example of how JPlayer works. Let's see. For some reason the music isn't working for me, or the audio isn't working, but
We can hear it coming through their laptop.
well, that's what I'm trying to do, but it's for some reason it's not playing. I think because I have HDMI on. Anyway, essentially in the game you've got 4 things going on, and right now there's background music playing, and then if I were to hover over one of these animals, they would make a noise. And if I click on them, our narrator says like painted dog. These are called painted dogs. They're African painted dogs. They're wild and they run around and they make weird noises. But JPlayer makes all of that possible, and really the code involved in making that possible is really, really beautiful. And you just basically say like, hover, when the mouse hovers over this painted dog, play this MP3, and it's like 1 line of code. So it's really, really fun.
So the background sound silences and then whatever you're hovering over.
Well, that's the cool thing, is that the background sound doesn't have to. I have 4 tracks basically, and they're 4 JPlayer tracks. So I have the background music track running, and then when the hover event happens, I have it on my 2nd track. So track 1 keeps playing. If you've ever done any kind of music production, it's the same kind of concept. If you have, the more tracks you have, the more cool things you can do. So track 1 is just continuing to play that background music, which I wish I could play for you right now.
Is it maybe you can use my computer?
Yeah, I'd like to
I
hear.
want
Sure.
log into the.
Let me see if I can pull this out and just.
the Bluetooth is on or something?
Let's see. Yeah, there we go. So, apologies if this is hard to see, but
Did you create the audio music?
it's all, so if it's music or a sound effect involving an animal, it's from, I think, iStock Audio. And then if it's the narrator, it's either Kara, who's part of the interactive marketing team at the Houston Zoo, or this guy who's really, really great, but he's like a voice actor in LA that they hired to do specific things for the game.
So they've already sourced the main components of that.
Right, and then handed over those MP3s to me as
Okay.
assets. But like if I mouse over a dog, that's the sound it makes. And that's jQuery. So I've got the background audio going, that's one MP3, and it's 30 seconds long and it just keeps looping. But I've also got a hover event for my mouse. And I say whenever I hover over a painted dog, that's the painted dog noise. But even cooler, and slightly annoying, when I click on it, Kara, her voice says painted dog, and it lets the kid know what animal they're clicking on.
Hello, adventurer. Before you can save anything to your journal, you'll need to sign up. Get an adult to help you.
So there's also just kind of all throughout the game, like audio triggers for the first time you do something. It just lets the kid know that they have to kind of figure something out before they can actually
Ostrich.
go through and play certain elements of the game.
So if they click on an animal, then that video comes up
Right.
of the live.
These are all shot at the Houston Zoo, except for the elephants. The elephants, they had to get a shot in the wild.
And then they can click on any of those circles and something else will show, pop up.
Ostriches sometimes lay their heads flat on the ground.
And I can actually do
on
this
sand
on the
and
big
pebbles
screen
so they
now
can-
that you've heard the audio.
Sounds great.
Thank you. The music I kind of take for granted now because I've heard it over and over and over for so long that it's hard for me to appreciate it. I'm sure after the project's launched and everything's back to
Training
normal,
power.
I'll appreciate it a little more. But yeah, basically this is another
Flocks of up to 50
effect
birds.
where I say when the mouse hovers over this card,
And zebras.
flip it around, show the fact for that card, and play this audio file. And that's all done with really simple CSS and JavaScript.
Was that your idea or was that something that they gave you to?
Everything in the animal card is all my baby. It's all my doing.
Ostrich habitats are becoming smaller.
Let's see. This is another fun one.
Ostriches do not bury their heads in the sand, but they will sometimes lie on the ground with their necks outstretched to avoid detection by a predator. An ostrich's kick is powerful enough to kill a lion if well placed.
An ostrich
In
is
some
what?
African countries, ostriches
kick.
are raced just like horses, and they can reach speeds of up to 45 miles an hour for short sprints, or
That's
30
all.
miles an hour for
Kara.
long
So there's little triggers
Snakes are
hidden
fastest
throughout
runner.
This is very good.
Thank you. There's little audio triggers hidden throughout those magnifying glass points, and they click off another MP3. So there's like hundreds of little MP3s.
Can you display those triggers?
I'm sorry.
Can you display them?
The triggers?
Triggers? Oh,
Sure.
yeah.
I could show you. Let's see.
And so then the script just has another code to be able to hide it.
Right, and again, that's all done using jQuery. jQuery is kind of, if it involves displaying or hiding or showing or animating anything, it's generally done in jQuery or just straight CSS3. Let's see.
And how did you get to a point where like, I want to do this, and then where you find the code to do that?
Most of it is just through experience, over the years, knowing if I want to hide something or fade something in or move it to a different position. It's just experience with jQuery. And then some of it was just specific to the game. It's like, hey, we think when you mouse over an animal, it should play this audio file. I personally thought that would be annoying, but through beta testing with kids, they really thoroughly enjoy playing around and seeing what the animals do.
The beta testing, you do that, or you do that?
No, that's we've got Kara at the zoo. She's kind of handling QA. She's got a team of like 10 neighbors, and all the neighbor kids are like totally well versed in the game now. But so, trying to give you an example of one of the pieces where some audio plays, and
You can do a find if you know what the key
right.
command is.
So this is basically the animal click code, and it looks a lot more intimidating than it actually is, but basically there's just kind of like 3 or 4 modes in the game, and if you're looking with binoculars, then we play a video, and if you're looking just in the normal mode, then we display the animal card. But like for example, to play an MP3 file, when something happens, when you click on the animal, it's just these 3 lines of code right here.
So what do you use to write this sort of?
This is a program called Coda.
Okay.
It's a Mac. It's kind of like the de facto Mac web programming application. I love it. So, okay. Is anybody sick of the music yet?
No.
Then I'll keep turning it up. So, again, JPlayer is what makes all that sound happen. And it's very, very cool. I can't stress JPlayer enough because really, before you had things like JPlayer and jQuery, doing the kind of event-based audio triggers that we're doing here in this game, you would have had to do it in Flash. It would have just been a tremendous pain to script everything like that. So with JPlayer, it makes it very, very easy, and it's free. You know, it's all open source. It's all free. It's all. Somebody need to let that guy in.
Hope it's not the Uber.
Okay, the last plugin that I wanted to talk about is something called Sprightly. And Sprightly is incredibly cool. And have you ever heard of sprites before? Sprites are sometimes they're used for 2 things generally in web. A lot of times designers will use them to take like a navigation bar and load up images really quickly to where you're not loading up 50 images, you're just loading up one big image. And it'll just focus on certain areas of the image. So if you have a navigation bar and you have a background, and then the mouse hovers over buttons, the image changes. It's all one big image. That's how people use sprites sometimes. And then the most common other case for that is sprites with animation. And I can take an image of an animal, a little cartoon snake, and I can have 4 frames, and I can say play these frames at 12 frames per second, and the snake will kind of come to life. So Sprightly makes that really, really simple. And again, it's cross-browser, mobile-friendly. It's another plugin that you just kind of drop into JavaScript and tell it with one line. You can say, take any HTML element that has the ID of snake and make it a sprite and make it move at this speed, and it has this many frames. And then suddenly these animals come to life. So anytime you see these animals moving around, that's Sprightly in action. And literally with one line of JavaScript and an image that has a lot of frames, actually the ostriches, it's more like 100 frames, but it's all kind of thrown in together and you just see them kind of loop. That's the kind of beauty of using Sprightly.
So they need to move, like if you were to program it where they would run, then that's the same
You
problem?
could do that with Sprightly, yeah. I'll give you Sprightly.
So basically, that condenses the amount of work that the developer is doing.
Animation used to be just, it would take a year to do that kind of stuff. And with Sprightly and tools like Sprightly, it takes so much less time. So for example, like here, this is Sprightly's demo site, but I'm speeding up and slowing down and changing the direction of these sprites.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I'm pretty impressed. And there are other tools that do this kind of thing. And I played with some of them and looked through a lot of different options, but Sprightly was the best one. So
Did you do that with those are animations, but did you do that with a human figure?
well, you could. If you did it with a human figure, basically the rule with animations is the more frames, the more lifelike it's going to look. The less frames, the less lifelike it's going to look. So if you had a frame, you know, a human waving, that sort of thing, if you only had like 4 frames in a sprite of me waving, when you played it, it would look really jumpy. But if you had like 400 of me waving, it would look much more smooth. And that's kind of, with the zoo game, we did a little mix. Like, most of the animals are pretty smooth. Some of the animals, we just didn't have time to make them as smooth, so they're,
Leopard is really nice.
yeah.
Look at his tail.
His tail moves and his leg itches. Trying to find one that wasn't as many frames.
So I have a question. If it was in a first person, I don't know if this, what? If it was
This
a
is
first-
called a side-scrolling seek and find game, by the way. Seek and find is just when you have elements on a screen that are kind of partially hidden, and you're supposed to interact and find them.
Mm. So if it was in first person, then you can zoom in, zoom out, and move in the environment in 360. Is that pretty easy to do? I mean, I don't even know if I'm asking the right question.
Anything involving a 3D versus a 2D
Like, you
makes
can-
it far more complicated than it would be, but there are games that are done strictly in CSS. With all the technology I've just shown you,
Mhm.
there are 3D games that have done everything with just the tools that I've shown you.
And it's just as smooth without.
Oh
a
yeah,
lot of-
yeah. If
and
you look up, you should Google like CSS 3D scrolling games or 3D shooter games.
Mhm.
There's some cool demos out there, and it's all just CSS-based animation. There's a band called Arcade Fire.
Is it
They're-
Minecraft kind of like that? Is it?
Yeah, there's games that are like Minecraft. There's a band called Arcade Fire that when HTML5 first came out, they did a lot of really cool videos with HTML5. You can do a lot of cool video stuff with that. I would look up some Arcade Fire's HTML5 technology. Another example here is we have, in every environment, we have something called a mystery animal. And when you find the mystery animal and you click on it,
You found a mystery animal.
that's another trigger
In your field journal.
that
What
says
hogs
like,
love to wallow in the mud. No wonder they're hard to find.
What hog?
so I said, when someone clicks on the mystery animal, play the mystery animal audio for that level, play the mystery animal little animation, then open up the animal card for that mystery animal. So that's basically it. Again, my name's Chris. My company is Aptitude, and this is a project we're probably going to be launching next week. So yeah, tell everybody. Make
Is
sure
it,
everybody knows.
Free?
Oh yeah, it's going to be kids.houstonzoo.org. You can sign up right now with your email address, and they'll send you an email as soon as we launch.